At first glance, you would never guess that the boy walking quietly through the airport terminal, hoodie up, headphones on, was the same teenager who flipped the world of darts upside down. People glanced at him without realizing they were in the presence of a phenomenon kid who had become a global headline before he even finished high school. But that's the thing about Luke Littler. His rise didn't need theatrics, PR campaigns, or a crafted superstar image. His talent did the talking, and the world listened. His story didn't begin with sponsorships, million-pound contracts, or social media celebrations. It began in a simple home in Warrington, with a cheap dartboard hanging on an old wall and a kid who fell in love with the sound of metal hitting. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. Luke, barely tall enough to reach the board properly, would spend hours standing on tiptoe, trying to mimic the pros he watched on TV. Inside that living room, a destiny was forming one quiet throw at a time. While other kids his age spent their weekends gaming or hanging out, Luke spent his at local pubs, always with adult supervision, competing against players twice, sometimes 3 times his age. People noticed the focus in his eyes. Even at 10, his approach was calculated, calm, almost unnervingly mature. He wasn't just good, he was special, something rare, something the sport hadn't seen in decades. By 12, he was already a name whispered across the amateur circuit. By 13, he was beating seasoned adults with a casualness that made spectators go silent. And by 15, he was doing the unthinkable, breaking into professional conversations before he was even old enough to legally order a drink at the bars he defeated people in. His rise was rapid, shocking, and sensational, but nothing and truly nothing could prepare the world for what would come next. When Luke Littler stepped into the 2024 PDC World Darts Championship, he wasn't supposed to be the story. He was supposed to be the novelty, the underdog, the fun little headline. Instead, he became the headline. Not just in sports, but globally. Country to country, news outlet to influencer page, everyone was talking about the same thing, the teenager who walked in like a boy but played like a champion. Every arrow he threw was a statement. Every win was a warning. And every crowd reaction thundered with something bigger than excitement. It was disbelief. Adults who had played the game for 20 years were being dismantled by a teenager who still needed permission forms for school trips. As he progressed deeper into the tournament, the world watched his composure. On the outside, he looked calm, expressionless, almost stoic. But inside, his life was changing at lightning speed. One week he was Luke Littler from Warrington. The next, he was Luke Littler, global sensation. His social media exploded. Sponsors flooded in. TV interviews lined up. People wanted to know everything about him, his family, his world, his ambitions, his future, and yes, his love life. Suddenly, the teenager who used to walk quietly through airports now moved with security nearby, photographers in tow, and fans yelling his name from a distance. And in the middle of all this chaos, there was one constant, his girlfriend. Now widely known in the public eye, the person who had been with him since before the spotlight became blinding. She wasn't chasing fame, and that made the story even more interesting. She represented the grounded reality behind Luke's meteoric rise, a reminder that he was still a teenager navigating real life, real emotions, and real relationships while the rest of the world turned him into a headline. Their relationship, quiet and private compared to typical celebrity romances, became one of the most Googled topics during his breakout year. Fans wanted to understand who she was, what she meant to Luke, and how she supported him through a pressure-filled world where millions watched his every move. The story of Luke Littler wasn't just about darts, it was about a life changing faster than anyone can prepare for. With success came wealth, and with wealth came a lifestyle shift. Not a flamboyant one. Luke was never the type to flaunt. But suddenly, he was signing contracts that pushed his net worth into territories unheard of for someone his age in the sport. Prize money alone was staggering, but that was only the beginning. Sponsorships from global brands, appearance fees, exhibitions, collaborations, and long-term deals turned him into a young millionaire before he even hit adulthood. Yet through it all, he remained Luke, the kid who loved darts, loved his close circle, loved his girlfriend, and loved the simple things. A teenager becoming financially independent while staying shockingly humble. His Instagram wasn't filled with supercars or nightclub parties. It was filled with darts, food, family, and occasional glimpses of the life behind the scenes, a life that was rapidly becoming more luxurious. And that's where the intrigue deepens. Because behind the scenes, away from public eyes, Luke Littler's lifestyle was evolving in ways only a select few knew. Upgraded housing, private travel arrangements during tournaments, VIP hospitality experiences, exclusive events. These weren't luxuries he flaunted, but they were part of the new world he had unlocked. Yet even with a rising net worth and a global spotlight, Luke's personality didn't change. That's what shocked people the most, not his talent, but his grounded nature. Interviewers repeatedly described him as polite, down-to-earth, unaffected by fame, a teenager who could dominate a world championship stage and then go home to enjoy a takeout kebab while playing video games. But fame has a way of testing a person, especially someone so young. Behind the viral clips, the sponsorship deals, the lavish experiences, and the headlines, there was always a question lingering in the background. How does someone so young balance love, lifestyle, pressure, and global attention without losing themselves? That question is at the heart of this story. And as we dive deeper, we uncover the truth about Luke Littler's relationship, the realities of his lavish lifestyle, and the figures behind his rapidly growing net worth, revealing a picture of a teen sensation living a life most adults can comprehend, all while trying to stay true to the boy he once was. As Luke's fame expanded, the world pushed closer, demanding to see not just the champion on the stage, but the young man behind the spotlight. And slowly, a fuller picture began to form, one that revealed the emotional weight, the private love story, the unexpected pressures, and the new lifestyle that came with global stardom. His relationship, once just a quiet bond shared between two teenagers away from public attention, suddenly became a conversation point for millions. When Luke first introduced his girlfriend to the world, whether intentionally or through the natural curiosity of fans, people noticed how normal she was, how grounded she appeared compared to the dizzying heights of his fame. It wasn't a celebrity romance or a PR-crafted image. It was simple, young love built before the cameras arrived. But love in the spotlight is never simple. Overnight, she became a trending name beside his. Her social media flooded, her privacy compromised. Reporters wanted quotes. Blogs wanted stories. Fans wanted answers. Some adored her. Others questioned every detail. And Luke, still navigating teenage life, had to learn how to protect someone he cared about, while also managing the uncontrollable power of worldwide attention. He handled it the only way he knew how, quietly, respectfully, and with a maturity far beyond his age. Whenever he was asked about her in interviews, you could see it in his eyes. The desire to draw a boundary between his professional world and his personal one. He spoke warmly but briefly, always keeping details private. It became clear that while darts was for the world, his relationship was for himself, and that made the world even more curious. People wanted to know how she supported him, how their young love survived the explosion of fame. Whether she traveled with him, whether she helped keep him grounded, whether she lived with him, whether wedding bells were in their distant future. The interest became massive because Luke's story wasn't just about success, it was about navigating adulthood before adulthood even truly began. But through all that attention, Luke stayed the same, and that consistency became one of the pillars of their relationship. On social media, fans occasionally caught glimpses of their everyday life, nothing extravagant, nothing staged. A meal out, a quiet moment, a casual selfie. These tiny pieces gave fans just enough to understand that Luke's emotional anchor was real, steady, and deeply meaningful in the whirlwind of fame. Behind the scenes, his lifestyle was evolving rapidly, not because he sought luxury, but because luxury found him. Tournament organizers flew him out with VIP arrangements. Sponsors treated him like a superstar. TV interviews placed him in elegant studios with private green rooms. His schedule was suddenly packed with experiences most adults wait a lifetime for. Still, his personal indulgences stayed refreshingly humble. Luke wasn't buying fleets of sports cars or collecting designer wardrobes. No, his luxury looked different. His splurges were upgrades, better gaming setups, high-end travel bags, premium clothing brands, comfortable trainers, the kinds of things that fit a teen's lifestyle but carried a wealthy touch. But the real shift came with his homes. When those first major paychecks arrived, Luke and his family began exploring new property options. Nothing extreme, new multi-million-dollar mansions or celebrity compounds, but the home they settled into reflected a new chapter, spacious, modern, comfortable, with room for privacy and security. A place where he could retreat from the cameras, unwind, and just be Luke. Inside, his world looked like any successful teen's dream. A top-tier gaming area, a dedicated darts practice room with professional lighting, a media setup worthy of a streamer, comfortable lounges, and a cozy environment shared with the people closest to him. It wasn't about showing off, it was about creating a space where he could breathe. Those around him began noticing that the biggest change in Luke wasn't his talent. Everyone already knew that was extraordinary. The change was the world adjusting itself around him. Wherever he went, restaurants, airports, arenas, hotel lobbies, people whispered, pointed, asked for pictures. Kids looked up to him. Grown men asked him for advice on throws, techniques, and pressure. Suddenly, Luke wasn't just a teenage player. He was a symbol of possibility. But behind those images of confidence, there were moments of overwhelm. Even the strongest teenagers can feel the weight of the world when the world moves too fast. Luke had days when he questioned the noise, when he just wanted to play darts without being a headline. Days when the pressure to perform, to entertain, to represent, felt heavier than the darts in his hand. His girlfriend saw those moments. His family saw those moments, and together, they became his emotional shield against the chaos. Whenever he wasn't competing or traveling, Luke disappeared into a quieter routine gaming nights. Take-out meals, long conversations with his closest circle, walks through local areas, things that helped reset his mind. Fame might have transformed his surroundings, but it didn't change the boy inside. That inner balance is what fascinated fans. How could someone so young handle so much so gracefully? How could he play under pressure that would crush seasoned athletes? How could he stay calm while millions watched him breathe, blink, think? The answer lived not just in his talent, but in the environment he built around himself. Supportive family, loyal partner, carefully chosen friends, and a strong sense of who he was before the world came knocking. Meanwhile, his net worth continued to rise at a pace few could have predicted. Every major tournament added massive prize money to his name. Every sponsorship, whether from drinks, brands, sportswear companies, equipment manufacturers, or media collaborations, added zeros to his financial profile. He became one of the highest-paid young stars in British sports, a rare financial success story for a darts player so early in his career. Brand experts began calling him a marketing dream. Companies loved that he appealed to both young audiences and traditional sports fans. His authenticity made him marketable, his talent made him valuable, and his story made him unforgettable. Behind closed doors, new management deals emerged. Lawyers, agents, and financial planners joined his world not to control him, but to guide him toward long-term stability. They helped him structure his investments, advised him on savings, and ensured he avoided the typical pitfalls young stars fall into. As he entered a new season of his career, one thing became clear: Luke Littler was no longer just an athlete. He was a brand, a rising empire, a long-term force in the sport with global appeal. And while the world speculated about his girlfriend, his lifestyle upgrades, and his rising wealth, the truth was far more human than the headlines suggested. Because beneath the fame, the cameras, and the glamour, Luke was still walking a line most teenagers never faced: balancing love, life, and legacy while the world watched closely, waiting to see what he would throw next. And now, as his story continues, the biggest questions still remain. How big will his fortune grow? How will fame shape his future relationship? And what does life look like for a teenage superstar stepping into adulthood with millions watching? Those answers all unfold next. As Luke Littler stepped deeper into the spotlight, the question on everyone's lips became louder, sharper, more curious. What does the future look like for a teenager who is already living a life that seems larger than destiny? To understand that, you have to look at the forces shaping him: his relationship, his emotional grounding, his evolving lifestyle, and the growing empire behind the numbers attached to his name. Because by now, Luke's world had expanded far beyond the dartboard. He wasn't just competing anymore, he was becoming a generational figure. Young athletes looked at him as proof that age was no barrier. Sponsors saw him as a golden opportunity. Media outlets framed his story as a modern sports fairy tale, and his fan base grew so rapidly that arenas began adjusting their marketing strategies around him. But the world's fascination didn't revolve solely around his skill. It revolved around who he was becoming, the man being shaped under the pressure of fame. And with that spotlight came a deeper look into his relationship, one that had unexpectedly become part of the public conversation. By now, fans had begun referring to his partner as his wife, not literally, but as a sign of how integral she appeared to his life. They watched how she supported him emotionally, how she stayed out of drama, how she remained loyal despite the world's noise. Their young relationship had matured under unusual circumstances. Fame changes everything: your routine, your circle, your stress levels, your priorities. But Luke tried to make one thing consistent: protecting the person who had been part of his private world long before the cameras arrived. People often talk about fame as a blessing, but they rarely talk about what it takes to hold on to something real when millions have access to your life. Luke understood early that privacy wasn't just protection, it was survival. So he kept her close, kept her safe, kept her out of headlines unless absolutely necessary. And that level of emotional discipline from someone his age became one of the most admirable traits in his story. Their shared moments were never staged. Their connection didn't need validation from the public. They built a quiet world within the loud one that surrounded them. And those who knew Luke personally often described her influence as one of the stabilizing forces that prevented him from being swallowed by sudden fame. Still, as his career expanded, so did his lifestyle. Not in a show-off way, but in a natural progression of success. Luke's world now included international travel, luxury hotels, private training facilities, and VIP-level event access. He was flown to tournaments like a seasoned star: chauffeurs waiting outside airports, elite accommodations, pre-arranged high-end dining options offered before and after matches. He didn't flaunt any of it, but those close to him saw the difference. Where once his travel was simple and local, it was now global and meticulously organized. Where once he practiced on a basic board at home, he now trained in professional studios with advanced analytics and precision lighting systems. Where once he blended into crowds, security now walked beside him in public places. Despite all of this, Luke's personal spending remained surprisingly modest. Instead of chasing flashy purchases, he quietly invested in comfort and longevity. His wardrobe upgraded subtly premium hoodies, top-quality sneakers, fitted travel gear, subtle designer touches. His offstage hobbies grew, too, upgraded gaming setups, rare collectibles, high-end entertainment experiences, and the kind of technology most teens only dream about. But his biggest investment wasn't material, it was emotional. Luke knew fame could vanish as quickly as it appeared, so he invested in the people around him, the relationships that would outlast the cameras. Family remained his anchor. His partner remained his confidant. And his closest friends became his circle of sanity. These were the people who didn't care about contracts, followers, or headlines. They cared about Luke the boy, not the brand. Still, one part of his life drew more curiosity than anything else: his net worth. By this phase of his career, the numbers being whispered in sports circles were staggering for someone his age. Prize money alone pushed him into the upper bracket of darts earners. His sponsorship deals, carefully chosen for long-term value, added significant annual income. His brand collaborations multiplied. His televised appearances grew, and his social influence skyrocketed, making him even more valuable to companies looking for authenticity and youth appeal. Financial experts estimated his net worth in the millions. Not the exaggerated, tabloid-inflated, millions, but real, structured wealth built through measurable deals and consistent performance. His team ensured his money wasn't just sitting idle. Investments were made, savings plans were set, property options were evaluated. Long-term sponsorships were negotiated with growth clauses that guaranteed increasing payouts as his influence climbed. This financial maturity is what separated Luke from many young stars who lost their fortunes as quickly as they gained them. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't impulsive. He listened, he planned, he understood the long game, and his advisors were determined to build a future where his success extended far beyond the dartboard. But with financial power came freedom to live a lifestyle shaped by comfort rather than extravagance. Freedom to travel without worry. Freedom to take breaks and reset. Freedom to build a future with the person he loved. Freedom to say no to things that didn't align with his goals. And that freedom created a deeper sense of confidence in Luke. Fans saw it in his interviews. Commentators saw it in his matches. The pressure no longer rattled him, it refined him. Every game felt like a step toward something bigger, something legendary. Behind the scenes, Luke's ambitions were growing. He wanted world titles, multiple. He wanted longevity. He wanted to inspire younger generations, especially those who came from similar, humble beginnings. He wanted darts to evolve, to reach new audiences, to break into mainstream sports culture in a bigger way, and he understood that he was the bridge to that evolution. But inside all those ambitions, the most powerful truth remained unspoken. Luke Littler was still a teenager, learning life in real time. Fame didn't automatically grant adulthood. Wealth didn't erase the confusion that comes with growing up. Success didn't make the world simpler. It made it louder. And Luke handled that noise with a calmness that even veteran athletes admired. People close to him often say the same thing: Luke knows who he is. And in an age where identity gets swallowed by social media and celebrity culture, that might be his greatest strength. Toward the end of the year, as he prepared for new tournaments, new events, new sponsorships, and new expectations, a quiet realization settled into his life. This was just the beginning. The world wasn't done watching him. His story wasn't even halfway written. And the chapters ahead might be even bigger, brighter, and more unpredictable than everything he had already achieved. But whatever comes next, marriage, more titles, bigger homes, global fame, or a future family of his own, one thing is certain: Luke Littler is no longer just a darts prodigy. He is a rising icon, a household name, a young superstar balancing love, lifestyle, legacy, and pressure with maturity far beyond his years. And the world is watching, breath held, waiting for his next throw.